Joy friends, and welcome to Once Upon a Storybook. My name is Cynthia with Cynthia's Joyful Creations, and we are going to look at another angel story titled A Miracle for Rita from the book of In the Arms of Angels from Joan Wester Anderson. The very presence of an angel is a communication. Even when an angel crosses our path in silence, God has said to us, I am here and I am present in your life. Tobias Palmer. Sister Mary Raphael lay back in bed trying to absorb what the doctor had just told her. Multiple sclerosis? She had a serious disease and one that might take her life. Nuns, of course, were supposed to be peacefully prepared for death at all times. They were so saintly and closely to heaven, at least that's what outsiders thought. But Sister Mary Raphael hadn't considered the possibility that she might die at this age. She was 23 and had only begun to live. Raised in a large Catholic family in Iowa, Rita McLaughlin was gifted and rambunctious. She loved God deeply and wanted to be a nun. In 1955, at age 15, overruling the judgment of her parents and some of the sisters, she joined the Servite Novitiate and moved to the convent and finished high school through a homeschooling program. The order demanded strict discipline and sacrifice, but Rita thrived on it and her prayer life deepened. What joy to be so close to God, to spend every waking moment serving Him. At age 17, she received the full habit and was given the name Sister Mary Raphael in honor of the Archangel Raphael, which would prove a significant choice. Sister Mary Raphael had just celebrated her 20th birthday and was happily teaching school when she began noticing odd physical symptoms. I started dropping things and tripping, and twice I completely lost my vision. Her physician found nothing wrong. Just get a lot of rest, he told her, and work on ruling your symptoms instead of letting them rule you. Sister Mary Raphael obeyed and had almost forgotten the episodes when, a bout with flu in 1963, her right knee began to give way at unexpected times. I compensated by always walking near a wall so I could grab something when it happened. There were strange bouts of numbness and waves of fatigue. She coped quietly. But one morning as she walked across the playground, her entire right side collapsed and she fell. She could ignore her symptoms no longer. A surgeon operated on Sister Mary Raphael's unsteady right knee, inserted pins to hold her kneecap in place, and compressed her knee into a cast. And he ordered therapy for the left knee too, since it was beginning to atrophy. Then he sat down with her to explain this difficult diagnosis. Although there is no definitive test to diagnose multiple sclerosis, doctors know that it is a disease of the central nervous system in which the sheathing that covers nerves develop lesions. Eventually, scar tissues began to block the nerve passages, distorting messages the brain sends to the body or preventing signals from completing their circuits. A small percentage of those afflicted experience permanent remission. For the majority, the journey is slow and painful as the disease gets progressively worse. Now, as the doctor left, Sister Mary Raphael fought fear and bewilderment. Why would God allow this to happen to her? Hadn't she given her life to Him? Yes, she thought, and my life is His to do with whatever He decides. The reassuring habit of prayer, which had stood her in such good stead during other times, helped her to rise to this challenge as well. There was nothing to worry about. God would take care of her. Time passed and Sister Mary Raphael's condition worsened. Both her physician and a priest, spiritual advisor, suggested that she leave the convent and return to life in the world. They pointed out that her work schedule was physically demanding and created stress that she could not handle. Ultimately, she would need more medical care than a convent setting could provide. Spiritually, she had most likely taken her vows at too young an age. Today, it would not be permitted, and did not have the wisdom then to understand the commitment that she was making. Initially, Sister Mary Raphael refused to listen to either her doctor or her spiritual advisor. She told them adamantly that she had freely chosen this life. Besides, no one could say for sure that she even had multiple sclerosis. But as she prayed for guidance, she underwent a change of heart. My prayer became, "Make your will known to me, and make it so clear that I will never doubt it for the rest of my life." Ultimately, Sister Mary Raphael recognized God's direction. The signs were obvious, and in the summer of 1968, she officially resumed life as Rita McLaughlin, teaching special education children in a school near Pittsburgh. Her multiple sclerosis also went into remission, and for the first time in years, Rita felt healthy and strong. She missed convent life, but was ready to see what else God had planned for her. 3 years later, Rita changed her name again when she married Ronald Klaus. Although she had not consciously seeking a mate, God had apparently found one for her, even though he was Lutheran. And she had no doubt that this was the proper next step. There was just one problem. Her new husband knew, of course, that she had been a nun for many years, but Rita didn't tell him about her medical situation. "I convinced myself that there was no reason to do so," she admits. "Why should I burden Ron with worries over things that might never happen?" During the next several years, Rita's good health continued. She gave birth to 3 daughters without experiencing any problems during her pregnancies or afterward. Obviously, she was one of the lucky ones in permanent remission, and she thanked God every night. Then in 1978, Rita's nightmare began again, at first with constant fatigue, which she attributed to the demands of 3 preschoolers. Then she began to stumble. One day, she almost dropped her infant and then had an episode of complete paralysis. Stunned, Ron brought her to the doctor. "What could be happening?" he asked. Rita was afraid to answer, for of course she knew. That night, Rita told her husband what she should have told him long before they married. When she was finished, Ron looked at her. "Is that all of it?" he asked. And Rita nodded. "I want a divorce," Ron said. He slammed out of the house and drove away. Sitting there in the darkness, Rita faced the enormity of what she had done. So completely had I rejected the fact that I might have multiple sclerosis, it never occurred to me that my dishonesty might one day cost me my marriage. Now she faced the prospect of being left alone as her health deteriorated. Worse was the injustice she had done to Ron. They had agreed from the start that divorce would never be an option, but she couldn't blame him for his decision. When Ron did return, however, he had calmed down. "It hurts that you didn't think you could trust me," he told her quietly. "But now we've got to figure out the best way to help you." They didn't have much time because things went downhill quickly during the next months, and Rita began to experience excruciating pain, particularly in her right leg, where deteriorating muscles were causing bones to press on the sciatic nerve. When the pain finally became unbearable, her surgeons severed all the muscles and tendons behind her knee. sliding the kneecap around to the side and permanently disfiguring her leg. From now on, she could walk only with calipers and leg braces. Her life had changed forever, not only physically, but also spiritually. Rita was furious with God. It had started slowly, just skipping prayer time when she felt anxious or upset. Then her estrangement grew. "Why have you done this to me?" she stormed over and over. "Why did you have me leave the convent, give me a husband and 3 children, and then make it impossible for me to be a wife and a mother?" No answer came. And eventually, Rita stopped asking. There was nothing more to say. God had abandoned her, and she hated him with all of her heart. "My hostility and bitterness worsened until it spilled out on everyone," Rita recalls. "Brick by brick, I built a wall between Ron and me, part of it based on the guilt I felt for deceiving him, part on anger because I now totally depended on him." Her daughters pulled away as well, preferring to spend time with anyone but their mom. Since therapy and whirlpool sessions and electroshock to stimulating remaining muscles were not covered by insurance, the family's debts mounted. The girls received subsidized lunches at school, and never in her life had Rita felt so humiliated or alone. One evening, a friend phoned. "Rita, there's a healing service tonight at St. Ferdinand's. Would you like to go?" Rita was incredulous. Healing in the modern age? Like those charlatans on television? I don't believe in that. Well, that was the way I felt too, but no, I don't want to go. Rita looked up, and Ron was standing there. "I want you to go, Rita," he said. No, she did not want to be a spectacle in front of others. Besides, she hated God, and she wasn't going to ask him for anything ever again. Her husband was almost pleading. "We have been to every doctor on earth, and none of them can heal you. What harm can this do?" Rita was silent. She had put Ron through a lot, and if this Lutheran man wanted her to go to a Catholic healing service, it was the least she could do. But no one was going to get her up in front of a bunch of people or pray over her. Absolutely no one. St. Ferdinand's was jammed when they arrived, and Rita's friend joined her family after settling Rita in the back. However, a young usher saw Rita and propelled her to a pew up front, despite her protest. Almost at once, the crowd, everyone but Rita, began singing, "Abba, Father." God was not my father anymore, she pointed out. And a procession of priests came down the center aisle. All passed but one, who suddenly stopped behind Rita. "Wait," she heard him say to the others, and then from behind her she felt him putting his arms around her in a backward bear hug. No, she didn't want any attention. And why was he doing this now, instead at the end of the ceremony, which was the customary time for healing prayer? There was no place to hide, and Rita turned crimson as the other priest, people in the pew, and everyone in church, it seemed, elevated their hands and rained prayer over her. And then all of a sudden, an explosion of peace filled me inside and out, Rita says. I had never felt so loved in all my life. And I heard myself praying for the first time in years. Throughout the service, her heart grew lighter and warmer. When the evening ended, the serenity stayed. It went home with her. It filled every crack in her heart and in her life. And in an instant, all her anger and despair were gone. I was still crippled on the outside, but inside, I was whole. Rita's physical condition continued to deteriorate. She now wore full-length steel braces on both legs, used her wheelchair frequently, and drove a car with hand controls. Her 1985 checkup revealed lost bowel and bladder control, partial paralysis, and atrophy on all 4 limbs, spasticity, which is involuntary muscle contractions, and more. The doctor told her that there no longer was a chance that she would go into remission. At most, she would live another 3 to 5 years. And despite the grim prognosis, Rita's buoyant spirit continued, tempered only with bouts of grieving for the hurt she had caused her family. Everyone noticed the change in her. If I had to choose between a spiritual or a physical healing, she told Ron one day, I would take what I've been given. There's no substitute for inner peace. In June of 1986, Rita was taking a scripture class, and on June 18th, she had a particularly bad physical day and fell into bed exhausted. It was hot in the bedroom, and Rita couldn't sleep. She was thinking about something she had recently heard. Many people believe that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was appearing in Medjugorje and then Yugoslavia to several peasant children. Healings and spiritual conversions seemed to be happening there in record numbers. How Rita longed to go, but such a trip would be impossible, and obviously a physical healing was not in God's plan for her. Now, as Rita lay in the darkened bedroom, she heard a gentle voice. Why don't you ask? It said. Startled, Rita looked around. The radio was off, and no one had come in. Yet the voice had been real. Could it have been her guardian angel? Or possibly Mary, the mother of Jesus? Actually, did it matter who was delivering this message if it was from God, her Father? Unexpected words came to her. Mary, she whispered, please ask your son to heal me. In any way, I need to be healed. Immediately, electricity coursed through her like tingling champagne bubbles, particularly strong on her right side. It was so comfortable. Amazed and blissful, Rita fell asleep. She awakened the next morning almost an hour late with no memory of the previous night's events. She would miss her class. Ron settled her in the car and cautioned her against speeding. Rita agreed and then shot out of the driveway. The helper assigned to Rita had left, so she was wheeled into her class late by a cafeteria worker. And because she had skipped breakfast, she now had a caffeine withdrawal headache. Since Rita couldn't hold a pen anymore, she tried to listen carefully, but the headache was a painful distraction. She could hardly wait until coffee break time. At 10 o'clock, as the others filed out, Rita suddenly felt a rush of heat roar through her, from her toes to the top of her head. What was happening? Then she began to itch everywhere, like a million pinpricks. She reached down to scratch her right leg and almost screamed. She could feel her fingers on her leg. She could feel her toes moving in the inside of her shoes and the braces. Yet Rita had felt no sensations below her knees for several years. How could this be? Afraid to tell anyone, Rita kept silent during the rest of class and then drove home quickly because she had to use the bathroom. Ron would not be there at this time. Could she get out of the van alone? Get into the house? She had not attempted that in months. Now, however, she ascended without even breathing hard, and when she raised her skirt to unlock her braces, she saw her right leg. "My God! My God!" Rita screamed. She could hardly believe her eyes. The kneecap was back on top of her knee where it absolutely could not be. Her permanently deformed right leg was now perfectly normal. Her physician would later discover that all the severed ligaments and muscles behind her knee had been reattached and restored. Nor was any part of her spastic or paralyzed or atrophied. Laying her crutches on the floor, Rita ran through the house, weeping and praising God. In an instant, her body and her life had been completely restored. The congregation watched in hushed awe as the Klaus family walked down the church aisle that following Sunday. Was it just a coincidence that the gospel, selected many months ago and read in all Catholic churches around the world that day, was about Jesus healing the crippled man? Rita did not think so. But God had more in store for her. As word spread, she accepted a few invitations to speak about her healing. She felt compelled to share, but uneasy about going too far away. During this time, she also attended a conference on angels. I learned that the Archangel Raphael, who I was named after in the convent, was the patron of healing and of travel. It was a real sign for me. God had taken me through a healing, and He would guard me on the road as well. I had always been under His and Raphael's protection, even when I didn't know or believe it. Rita realized that God's love for her had never changed. His plan, which at times had seemed so wrong, had been right after all. From now on, she would be a sign to others that He was alive and near, still sending His angels and working His miracles in the world. Today, Rita Klaus is completely healthy with no symptoms or after effects of multiple sclerosis or any other diseases. Her physicians do not know what happened, only that it did. Nor does Rita know why she was selected for this honor. She wrote a book about her experiences and now speaks around the world, witnessing to her journey. Life is not perfect, and troubles occasionally intrude. But from the moment she was spiritually healed, she decided to be completely God's. And nothing will ever change that. What a story. What a great story of healing. I just want to share that if you are joining these angel stories for the first time today, if you know nothing about me and my channel, I'm just going to take a brief moment. I know this has been a long story, so I will make this short. I know how Rita felt. The only difference is I never gave up on God. You see, the last 8 months, actually longer than that, about this time last year, October 2020, I really began having difficulty walking, sitting, laying down, sleeping. I was in so much pain, and it hurt to do normal physical activities. My back seemed to be on fire all the time. Speeding ahead to late November, early December, we discovered that my spine was crushing my nerves. And if I didn't have surgery, then, well, I didn't find out all of that information until in January of 2021. In late November, early December, we began running all kinds of tests, MRIs, CAT scans, nerve testing, whatnot, to discover that the spine was crushing the nerves. And so they decided that I needed to have immediate surgery. Otherwise, I was heading for a life of being crippled and permanently bound to a wheelchair to a lifespan of only 2 more years. So I had that surgery, and it was supposed to be one surgery for 4 hours, 4.5 hours. It turned into 2 surgeries, one on February 2nd, the initial day, and they completed it on February the 4th. I ended up being under anesthesia a total of 18 hours through the surgery and recovery. And when I came out of the second surgery, I had no feeling or mobility in my right leg and hip and going into my groin area. So I had to go through lots of things to be able to function, to going to the bathroom, getting around, whatnot. Here I am 8 months after that surgery, and I am finally walking on my own. And I'm getting ready to enter back into society and do a job. But in the process, I came very close to dying almost 6 times in this last 8 months. And one of those times I did successfully code, but the doctors were successfully able to bring me back because God is not done with me. And through all of that, there's been blood infections, and there was urinary incontinence, and there was, all kinds of different things. I fell, that created more injuries. It just was a lot. And I thought that I would never be physically healed again. I have an amazing husband who is my best friend and the most wonderful caregiver I could have ever asked for. And I know with everything, and then I got an embolism. I had a total of 4 blood clots, 2 in each lung, that should have tried and unsuccessfully did not take my life. Praise the Lord. And here I am sitting 6 weeks away from that horrible night. I still don't have complete feeling in my leg. I still don't have complete mobility in the upper thigh, in the quad area. And I don't have 100% urinary continence, but I am walking and I am getting ready for a job interview. And I could ask for nothing more. I would like to say, Lord, I would like to eventually, not have to wear pull-ups anymore. But He chose to give me breath. And I will take breath and purpose over pull-ups. But the point of my story is, Sometimes things happen, but it's because God allows them. He gives our life permission for these things to happen for one reason or another. And I really ought to consider writing a book because I have seen God's hand through all of this, even the most difficult days. I knew He was there. I knew He wasn't giving up on me. And because of that, He gave me the will to always fight and to always find joy in the chaos. And when those storms came, I could always see the rainbow on the other side, peeking through. In that brief moment that I died and came back, there are pieces that I can't remember and I can't put together, and it sometimes bothers me. And I ask, well, God, if you weren't ready for me, why did I even have to pass for a minute? And I can answer that because throughout the last 8 months, not only has He humbled me in so many ways and made me appreciate things that I didn't normally appreciate, that I just took for granted, and little things. And even though my spiritual life is strong and has remained strong, it was what I needed to fight even harder than what I was fighting. Because I was fighting hard mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But I needed a little bit more oomph to fight harder physically. My physical therapist didn't come for over a month because my insurance was dragging their feet about approving more visits. So in their absence, I didn't just double, I tripled the exercises. I chose to walk more with the walker, then the cane, now my own 2 feet. And I started riding a bike on a stand. So it was like an exercise bike. And when they returned for the first time this week, they were shocked. Could not believe that I was the same girl that they last laid eyes on 4 weeks ago. But there are other changes that happened from that death experience that has made me appreciate life and family and things so much more. And it's also taught me how to let go and not worry, how to not stress out over things, to just accept what happens and to be more laid back, to quit apologizing for all the things I cannot do, but rejoicing and praising for all the things that I can do. So Rita's story touched me very, very much. And I'm so glad that she didn't stay away from God forever. And I'm so glad that He was able to answer her prayer in the way she wanted. What a beautiful story. Because I know many people are struggling with things. In fact, everyone is. Everyone carries some kind of burden every single day. And I want to close this by saying, give it to Him. I promise you, He loves you enough to hear your prayers, to hear your cries, and He will answer them. It may not be in the timing that you want. It may not be in the way that you want, but it will be in His timing and in the best possible scenario for you. because He wants more for you than you even realize you want for yourself. I hope you've enjoyed this story. It is a rather long one today, and then me talking at the end, but I do believe in the Lord, and I do believe He has angels that work for Him to help us along the way. Well, this has been Once Upon a Storybook with A Miracle for Rita. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I look forward to meeting here with you next Tuesday for yet another angel story. It will be titled Angel of God, My Guardian Dear. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, then hopefully you'll come back and join us again next week. But until then, be joyful, everyone. Stay healthy, stay happy, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.